Good morning, folks. Thank you for tuning in to the News at Ben, the second one in 2025. And just like last week, I think I started off by saying that the news had been phenomenal in just the sheer output of political news and changes that's going on. And it looks like 2025 is just going to continue at that pace. So what are the key takeaways from last week, for me at least? Well, I want to talk about three things. I want to talk about Elon Musk and the gang rape gangs in the United Kingdom. That's my first topic. The second topic I'd like to talk about is Reform UK and the spate of resignations it's had. And I think something that's infecting Reform UK at its heart. And then the third thing I want to talk about is the farmers who have habitually been neglected by our government. But turning to item number one, Elon Musk and the gang rape gangs. Now, it won't be lost on people. I think everyone who's even remotely politically engaged will be aware that the gang rape of underage white British girls, largely by 85%, at least according to the Quillian report, of men of South Asian origin, many of whom are Pakistani, has been going on for many, many years. And a number of them have been brought to justice. And in a way, it was because a number of them have been brought to justice that the facts have been made known to the public. But Elon Musk got hold of some of these facts about 10 days ago, and he tweeted on the subject. And it was his tweet, his bringing of attention to the subject, actually, that has got our political establishment at last looking at how it is that these crimes were perpetrated right under the noses of the police, social services, our local councils, and so on, many of whom knew about what was going on and turned a blind eye, some of whom actually participated, effectively becoming complicit in the gang rape gangs, even though they may not have been part of the rapes. And it's a tragedy, really, for me, that it takes a foreign billionaire to tweet something to get our establishment to do what it should always have done automatically, which is not just bring these people to justice, but reveal how it is that they got away with it for so long, and to bring all the rest of those people to justice that deserve punishment for their complicity. And almost on cue, Parliament turned its back again on the British people this week, when the opportunity arose to have an inquiry into how this happened. It turned away from it. It decided it wasn't going to have an assessment of the sorry state in which the child protection of this country has reached. And that is tragic at a number of levels. But the most important thing for me is that I can't see how we as a country can look forward with confidence to a criminal justice system and social services and other institutions that are meant to care for us, discharging their obligations correctly, if we've got no confidence that when they fail to do it, that they will be brought to justice. We can't look forward with confidence unless our past is first put right. And the government has therefore stripped away, I think, the British people of its ability to look forward optimistically and in the hope that this will not happen again. The other thing that I find remarkable is that there's been no talk about deportation from the government of those who hold dual nationality, are capable of being deported, and should have been deported for these atrocious crimes. And I was surprised to find, when I did a bit of digging around, that actually the government of Pakistan already has a treaty with the United Kingdom, the Pakistan Prisoner Transfer Treaty, for the removal of Pakistani nationals, whether they be dual British nationals or not, to Pakistan to carry out their sentences in Pakistan as opposed to the UK. And I wanted to test, some of you may have seen my tweet earlier, so you'll know this, but I wanted to test whether there was some resistance from the Pakistani authorities in actually doing their job. And so I spoke to a friend of mine who's high up in one of the law enforcement agencies in Pakistan, and he said, absolutely to the contrary, Pakistan would be delighted to take full part in honouring the terms of the treaty, but it needs the British government to invoke it. And so far, it hasn't done so, not at least as far as these gang rape gangs are concerned. So our government has been slow to bring to court and justice those who've committed these crimes. It's turned its back on bringing to justice those who turned a blind eye and were complicit in these crimes. And it is now turning a back on deporting those who should rightfully be deported to Pakistan and other countries where possible. Our government continues in contempt of the British people, and most importantly in this case, in contempt to underage white British girls who deserve the full protection, not just of the state, but of the communities in which they live. The second topic I want to discuss on the News at Ben, as I mentioned, is the issue of the resignations at Reform UK. Now, there's been a spate of them. And actually, I did a tweet on this yesterday, a little piece to camera, on Andrew Southall, Howard Cox, and the 10 councillors from Derbyshire who resigned. And I'm going to reiterate some of that. But since I did that piece, actually, the chairman of the Hitchin branch has also resigned. And it seems that this pattern is going to continue. So how did we get here? This is how I think Reform UK has got into this trouble. There were a number, I would say, I would count them in hundreds, of people across the country who were promoting Reform UK, myself included, and those who've resigned this week included, who were promoting Reform UK, putting it on the map at a time when it simply had no political presence. These were the people who were taking time out of their day jobs, who were taking time out of their well-earned weekends, actually to put the country first. They were doing it, all of them, unpaid, going around the country, bringing people's attention to the existence of Reform UK, promoting the policies of Reform UK, and then standing repeatedly in various elections, and more often than not, obviously as a new party, losing in elections, because that's what happens as you go up in percentage terms. These are the people who took Reform UK from nothing in the polls to 16% in the polls when the general election was called. But after the general election, Nigel, who appointed himself during the middle of the general election, having first said he wasn't going to stand, Nigel decided that he was going to appoint new leadership, which is fine, that's his prerogative. You want to sack me, that's absolutely fine as far as I'm concerned. You want to take on Zia Yusuf? Well, he must know something about Zia Yusuf I don't, because I'd never heard of him before he was taken on by Reform UK, but there you go. And he was going to professionalise and democratise the party. The net result of their professionalisation of the party, at least so far that I can tell, is an alienation of the very people who put the party on the map. Now, when you run a political party, and I don't mean to be teaching grandmothers how to suck eggs, but when you run a political party, you're appealing to people to give up their free time, to put the country first, sometimes to put their heads above a parapet in a way that exposes them to the loss of friends, the loss of jobs, ridicule in their own community and so on. You're having to garner support from people who are doing it for love, not for money. You can't professionalise Reform UK if you treat it like Goldman Sachs. These people are not being paid 7-figure salaries. They're doing it for love. They're doing it for the love of their country. So when those people have done all of that, and then you treat them like rubbish, when they say a few things with which you disagree, particularly when they criticise the party and you take exception to it, like an adolescent, prickly teenager, it's not surprising that they resign. And let me tell you something, the leadership of Reform UK. if you continue to do what you're doing, you will be without a grassroots. You may have people who are prepared to be paid to do the job, but they will never do it as well as those who do it for love. And I just want to remind people that it is not the leadership who are owed gratitude by the British people or the 4 million people who voted for Reform UK, or more particularly the grassroots who got the votes for Reform UK. They are not obliged to be grateful to the leadership of Reform UK. It is the leadership of Reform UK that must be grateful to all of them. I urge huge humility, please, in the leadership. Respect the grassroots, respect the movement that was created by the grassroots, and acknowledge your indebtedness to them. It is vital that you do so, because if you don't, you will fail. The third topic about which I'd like to speak this morning is farmers. Now, they've been in the news last week quite a lot. I haven't been able to give them all the attention that I would have wished to have given them, all the support I would have wished to have given them, because I've been so focused on the gang rape gangs and other stuff that's been going on, including, of course, what's been happening at Reform UK. Even though it's no longer my party, I take a very keen interest in it. But the farmers are vital. And they're vital for the self-evident fact that if we don't have farmers, we don't have food. And for all the bleeding heart climate change activists, please remember that food grown in the United Kingdom has a much smaller carbon footprint associated with it than food grown in the EU. For reasons that are not clear to me, climate activists and Europhiles seem to be pretty much the same group of people, and Brexiteers seem to support British farmers. I don't know why that is. You would have thought that there'd be some common ground there, but it seems the liberal elite, who are pro-EU, pro-net zero, pro-masses of regulation, are actually antipathetic to British farmers, to British business generally, and to national interests. And I suppose maybe at one level we shouldn't be surprised by that, because they are liberal globalists. They don't really care about the United Kingdom. But we better start caring about our farmers for the very basic reason that I started with. No farmers, no food. And the farmers have been in the crosshairs of political and economic regulatory attack, I'd say, for 40 odd years, ever since massive supermarkets became the order of the day. Small shops, which used to pay higher prices for their goods so farmers could make more money, have been put out of business. Big supermarkets have been able to drive down the cost of goods coming from farmers because of their buying power, their economies of scale, effectively the monopoly that they have. They've used that to weaponize the way they negotiate with farmers. And then on top of that, we've had this huge increase in regulatory burden with which farmers need to comply, not being allowed to till all their fields all at the same time, having to comply with the net zero, increasingly demanding net zero obligations, paying ever increasing prices for their fuel, their fertilizers, all of which depend on fossil fuels. And now this latest assault on our farming communities, basically by making it impossible for farmers to assure that their families can manage their farms, own their farms, pass on their skills from one generation to another. Intergenerational passage of skills is how fundamentally countries pass skills down. And the farmers are not alone in this attack. I've mentioned businesses. Well, small and medium-sized businesses are crucial. I think 96% of British businesses by number are SMEs. And they too have been attacked in the same way, with increasing regulatory burdens, increasing taxation, increases in taxation in the form of business rates, corporation tax up, and then of course the whole net zero agenda, which is such a burden for businesses generally, and now on inheritance tax on small businesses applied, the changes to the farming taxes apply equally to small businesses. And I want everyone that cares about our farming community, our small and medium-sized enterprises in this country, that care about the United Kingdom, and if they care about the climate. I want them all to come together and stick by British farmers. We must not turn our back on them. I haven't been as active as I would have liked to have been last week, but when I'm able, I'm going to be getting right stuck in behind them. Thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in to the News at Ben. I hope you have a very pleasant, harmonious, settled Sunday, and I hope the political news is slim so that you can do so with a settled mind. Thank you very much.